H.R. 4090 builds on President Trump's efforts by codifying aspects of 3 executive orders related to hard rock mining. First, H.R. 4090 requires the Department of the Interior to assess the cost of America's import reliance for each mineral commodity monitored by the USGS. This data will inform further efforts to reduce our reliance on foreign adversaries like the People's Republic of China. Next, the bill directs agencies to identify federal lands suitable for new mineral production, streamlining priority mining projects on federal lands, and accelerate mapping efforts to provide a clearer picture of significant domestic mineral wealth. Finally, H.R. 4090 directs Interior to conduct a nationwide review of laws and regulations, including those from state and local governments, that discourage mineral development. Interior will then provide a report to Congress with their findings, along with policy recommendations to increase domestic mining. During markup, the Natural Resources Committee worked across the aisle to strengthen this bill, adopting 2 minority amendments that require Interior to report to Congress on the barriers to byproduct mineral production on federal lands and examine projects with the potential to produce hard rock minerals from coal ash and coal byproducts. And I am proud that the bill was reported by the Natural Resources Committee with bipartisan support. H.R. 4090 takes a broad and forward-thinking approach to addressing one of the country's most serious challenges. By codifying these policies into law, we will provide our domestic mining sector the policy certainty it needs to invest and grow here in the United States. I urge the committee to adopt an appropriate rule so we can bring this bill to the floor, and I yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stauber. Representative Ansari, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Fox and Ranking Member McGovern. I'm here to testify in opposition to H.R. 4090, sponsored by Representative Stauber. At a time of total chaos across our nation, a partial government shutdown, ICE terrorizing communities and murdering Americans in the streets, and countless other crises, our colleagues across the aisle have chosen to spend time on a bill that hands the mining industry the power to gut its own regulations while doing nothing to actually secure American critical mineral supply chains. Now, I do support mining where appropriate, where there are proper environmental and labor safeguards, and I do believe that there are some positive aspects of this bill. But that does not mean that we should be handing over the keys to the industry to pick and choose its own regulations, because I've also seen what happens when mining goes wrong. We've seen water contaminated with toxic pollution, groundwater run dry, and tribal sacred sites and cultural resources disrespected and destroyed. This bill effectively directs the mining industry to tell Interior and the Forest Service which regulations to eliminate, regulations that are essential to protecting communities from toxic waste and polluted drinking water, and that ensure our communities have sufficient opportunity to have their voices heard. And as we've repeatedly raised, our domestic mining industry is dominated currently by foreign companies, some even owned by our adversaries, and nearly all of whom pay no royalty back to the American people for extracting publicly owned minerals. This bill makes it even easier for these foreign-owned companies to take our American resources for free. Under H.R. 4090, any mine the Secretary deems a, quote, priority would get fast-track approval, even if it is owned by a foreign adversary of the United States and the minerals would be shipped abroad, or if it would devastate a local community. Again, I support responsible domestic mining. We need minerals for our modern economy, and I want to see secure, strong supply chains, but we cannot mine our way to security with brute force. We need to work with our allies to strategically source and process minerals. We need a recycling industry, and we need to explore innovative, low-impact ways to source essential minerals, such as from more mine tailings. And while there are some parts of this bill that direct the government to conduct studies on some of these findings, it's clear the primary purpose is to gut regulations and hand over even more power to an industry that is already getting pretty much everything that they've asked for. This bill does not come up in a vacuum. We must consider who benefits from this mining free-for-all. Just 2 weeks ago, the Trump administration announced that it would invest over $1 billion and take an equity stake in USA Rare Earths, a mining and manufacturing company. Reporting uncovered that USA Rare Earth hired Cantor Fitzgerald to help with fundraising, a firm chaired by Brandon Lutnick, the son of Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. And in October, the Trump administration announced equity investments in mining company Trilogy Metals, while simultaneously directing agencies to fast-track permitting for Ambler Road, the controversial project needed to access Trilogy Metals' proposed mine site. Trilogy Metals' third largest shareholder is John Alfred Paulson, a Trump mega donor and economic advisor. His shares increased $70 million in value after the announcement. The administration is making a pattern out of picking winners and losers in the mining industry, and a suspicious number of those winners have close ties to Trump officials. These deals tie taxpayer dollars to corporate balance sheets and incentivize administration officials to prioritize individual corporate interests over the broader public good. Earlier today, Ranking Member Huffman of the Natural Resources Committee and Ranking Member Garcia of the Oversight Committee, both committees I'm fortunate to serve on, sent a letter to the administration demanding answers on the Trump administration's taxpayer-funded mining spending spree. To date, there has been no public disclosure of procedures or safeguards in place to ensure that these ownership stakes do not influence permitting decisions, regulation, enforcement, contracting decisions, or any other agency decisions relating to these mining and mineral projects. Before we give this administration even more power to enrich themselves at the expense of everyday Americans, let's get answers to at least some of these questions. I reiterate my interest in working with colleagues on innovative ideas in the mineral space, but I cannot support this bill as written. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Miss Ansari. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. I am going to ask questions on this bill. Representative Stauber, are you, or is the committee, that the Natural Resources Committee, as far as you know, motivated with this bill to help any person or any entity?
No.
No, okay. But I think we should get that out of the way right away. My good friend, Representative Leisure Fernandez, has offered an amendment before in this committee and in the Natural Resources Committee, I know, about prohibiting companies that are 10% foreign-owned from receiving the benefits of the bill. I wonder if that well-intentioned amendment might have unintended consequences. And so I'd like to ask about that. So it's apparent that China's already doing whatever that it can do to prevent us from building out secure domestic supplies of critical minerals, right? China has been for many years trying to corner the market on critical minerals, right? So what would prevent China, or some other country for that matter, from going out and buying 10% of a company, 10% of the stock of a company, and then stopping this legislation from applying to that particular mine, and therefore inadvertently cutting off supply of critical minerals? How can we not have the law of unintended consequences go into effect with that amendment? Because the amendment's before the committee, and so I'm jumping to that because I think it raises the issues related to this.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I will tell you that China has been devastating to our economy in many ways, including mining. They will dump their cheap steel when they have to. They'll try to put out of existence our mining industry, in particular on the Iron Range. They will, on their commodity prices, they will short cut them to reduce cost across the globe so there's no investments anywhere else. And specifically to Representative Ledger Fernandez's bill there is when you put an arbitrary number on it, the communist country of China, they cheat. They'll just go on the market.
You don't mean it.
Yes, I mean it, Madam Chair, and I've seen it. So they're just going by whatever arbitrary number we put on. They're just going to buy 10%. If we say it's 14%, they're going to buy 14%. That way they stop the mining in our country. You've just given them the opportunity to do that. And it would have been written in our law. And so I think that we have to recognize we've got to win this AI war. We got to win the energy war. We have to win the mining war. We have the ability to do it. I will tell you, Madam Chair, that in the district that I represent is the biggest copper nickel find in the world. We need those critical minerals. In addition, in the same complex, we have found helium at between 11 and 13%. Helium at 3% is economically viable. And so these are rich minerals, and we also have found titanium in northeastern Minnesota. So I just ask that we allow my constituents to get to have the opportunity to have well-paying jobs, and in the United States, it's with our labor, our environmental standards, and there are no shortcuts.
Well, I will tell you the approach I take about this. I think the Lord gave us the resources that we need on this earth to do what it is we need to do to survive and to thrive. And I think without being detrimental long-term, we ought to be able to use the resources that the Lord gave us to use. I'm as much of a conservationist as I think anybody in this body is. I grew up very poor, so I was used to not using things to begin with. That stuck with me. So I don't use things, and I recycle everything, and I look to preserve the earth. And I farmed most of my life, and I think farmers do that despite what they say. So we have to figure out a way, it seems to me, to be able to take advantage of the resources that we have in a responsible way, and not let some other country come in and use what belongs to us.
Madam Chair.
So we have to look for ways to do that.
Madam Chair, I couldn't agree with you more. These minerals are going to get mined. They're going to get mined because the demand's for it. Do we want to lead or not? Do we want to export our environmental guilt or not? Minnesota's been mining for 145 years. We mine the iron ore that goes into taconite that makes over 80% of this nation's steel. We know how to do it. And Madam Chair, I think that we know China will do anything to undercut us. We've seen it. And we can't allow it to happen any longer.
Well, thank you very much. And I use Ms. Ledger Fernandez. We're good friends, but because she had the amendment, it gave me the opportunity to delve into this issue now. She'll probably want to talk about her amendment later, and I'm not trying to cut that off, but I'm over time, and so I yield to Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you both being here, and I don't really have any questions, but I just want to make an observation. I kind of feel like we spend an awful lot of time up here in the Rules Committee debating bills that seem to benefit in terms of profit members of the Trump administration or members of their cabinet. I mean, there have been some questionable deals that the administration has been making over the last year. I mean, from Stephen Miller selling shares in a rare earth mining outfit for significant profit after the administration announced the deal supporting the company, to Howard Lutnick's son being hired on another minerals deal. And this administration has now taken equity shares in 7 mineral companies, several of which have documented ties to administration officials. And I just, I mean, I know when we raise these issues, my friends just let it let it go by, but, I mean, at some point, this doesn't smell right, and that's just my conclusion, but I do want to yield to Ms. Ledger Fernandez to allow her to respond.
Thank you, Jim, and I thought that maybe we'd have a conversation about this since you just raised it, so that way we can stay on topic. And thank you for calling me your good friend. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and being able to call you a friend as well. I think that what's interesting is that my amendment and the issue that I raised repeatedly with regards to allowing China and our adversaries take our minerals comes not from me. I mean, I'm not that smart. It comes from the Select Committee. That's where it came from. This originated with them last Congress, where they raised the issue about the fact that we need to start saying China and our adversaries should not be mining our lands, because what that then happens is they take those resources to China. And last time Representative Stauber was here, he didn't want to answer that question, that like what was going to happen. I asked you where is the copper that they intend to mine near the boundary water is going to go, and you have to acknowledge that was going to go to China. But that was let me finish the point I was going to make. So, Madam Chair, I think that what you're talking about is good for us to wrangle with that. What this bill does is it provides a benefit. And what I am saying is we should not be providing these benefits to our adversaries.
I agree.
So, but every time I raise the issue of let's stop, we keep having these mining bills come before us, I keep saying let's not offer that benefit to our adversaries, and we keep hearing, oh, we can't do that now, we can't do that now, we can't. Well, when are we going to ever say enough? When are we going to ever say, we don't want China to be taking these things? And I think the argument that, oh, the unintended consequences, China might come in here and buy a bunch of, and buy the controlling stock, well, then my question would be, if they buy that controlling stock, do we really want them to get the benefits? Because if they got that controlling stock, they're going to then take all the minerals. And I think that that's the problem, is what you just pointed out is exactly the problem. If we don't say, no, you can't, then they're going to keep doing it because we have not put we have never said no to them. And we need to start saying no. We need to start saying that these resources are very important. And in my state, we have a huge mine down in Silver City. It mines all kinds of things. Guess what? It's American owned. You can have American owned companies. And if you start saying that these kinds of things are only available to either American owned companies or companies owned by our allies, or at least not our adversaries, then you're going to start having more American or friendly companies owning them. So that's the consequences. I think you're thinking of what are the consequences. That's the consequence I'm looking for. The consequence I'm looking for is saying no to China and our adversaries, and yes to Americans and our allies. So does it make sense of where I'm trying to go with it? And the fact that it came out of this whole line of what we should be doing. Talk to Representative Molnar about it. And when I talked to Secretary Burgum about it, he agreed with me. I mean, this is not something that this should be bipartisan. I don't know why the natural resources keep saying we can't do it now. They don't say that it's the wrong thing. They just keep saying we can't do it now, and over again, it can't be now. And there's always some kind of new excuse. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern, and I'll just say very quickly, we need to put some really good minds on how to solve this. All right, Ms. Fishbach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Stauber, thank you for bringing the bill forward, because I know how hard you have worked for Northeast Minnesota. And I know there's a lot of discussion about who's going to benefit from it. But I know what you're talking about is you're talking about those folks in Northeast Minnesota, those miners in Northeast Minnesota, who this has been their life. I mean, you mentioned, what, 135 years of mining. and they've had it pulled out from under them so many times now. And one quick question. Does this bill require any specific mine to be opened?
No, no, not at all.
I know that that's been one of the criticisms, is
Yeah.
that we're trying to open certain mines and, near the boundary waters, all kinds of things like this. But this is just simply, maybe you want to explain it
It's
again.
really, it's good report language. And I do, Representative Fishbach, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, I do want to maybe correct something that the ranking member said. He said there's no benefit. In at least one proposed mine in northern Minnesota, there will be estimated $1.8 billion of federal royalties paid to the federal government. There will be $800 million of taxes over the life of the mine paid to the state of Minnesota. And that does not include the school trust fund where mining royalties go in. So every single school district in the state of Minnesota receives a benefit from mining. And I think that to my good friend and colleague, Representative Ledger Fernandez, she talks about the mining and the oil and gas in her state. Those are really good paying jobs. I asked my friend, can my constituents have those same good paying jobs? Those $135,000, $150,000 a year jobs? Can my constituents have them? We can lead.
And thank you, Mr. Stauber, but I thought that we should turn this around to who is it? It really does benefit those individuals, those
Right.
folks. It's going to benefit the economy, it's going to benefit, and you mentioned the school trust fund, and it's going to do,
Well, and strategic national security as well.
Absolutely.
And we're going to have an opportunity, and my good friend and colleague, Representative Ledger Fernandez, is going to have the opportunity to support legislation that allows processing and refining to happen in our country, and it's going to happen very soon. So I'm looking forward to for her support on it.
thank you, Mr. Stauber, and I do think that this, it really does, it only makes sense to be mining where we have the resources and making sure that we are using what we have to lessen our dependence on
Yeah.
others and growing our economy.
So this doesn't greenlight any project. You still have a rigorous permitting process, both at the federal level and the state level.
Yep. All right, thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Ansari, we're hearing a lot about this bill and the wonders it's going to produce, but it feels a little bit like all hat, no cattle. Would this bill do anything to meaningfully increase critical mineral production?
Thank you for the question. No, and the two fundamental issues I see with this bill, Ranking Member McGovern talked about the corruption aspect, essentially. And first and foremost, what this bill does is direct the Department of Interior to be able to work directly with the mining industry around deregulation. I mean, I think fundamentally that is something that should not be happening. If we want to properly regulate an industry, that industry should not have a direct say in that. As was also mentioned, I do think the fact, some of the questions that we've posed in committee and throughout the negotiation process of this bill have been, can we get some of these questions answered before we pass this bill? Questions around what will the permitting processes look like? How will we avoid conflict of interest to the point of Trump administration officials very closely tied to Stephen Miller and Howard Lutnick making tens of millions of dollars in relation to mining companies? But ultimately, even more so than that, I think the issue around China is what is so perplexing to me, right? I think if I fully agree with the creation of jobs, again, I support mining. There's a lot of mining in Arizona. I have, all of the labor unions in our state that are, that were very disappointed when clean energy tax credits were cut, that cut many of the jobs in our state, are excited about mining jobs. But they want to also make sure, and many of these labor unions are, our majority conservative members, they want to make sure that it's American-owned companies and benefiting the United States as well. So I think, just want to really echo the point around the fact that that is a common sense amendment that came directly out of the Select Committee for China. And I think, ideally would be easily supported by Republican colleagues today.
Makes sense. It does seem, okay, this is an attempt to move things forward for this industry, but we do need to be careful both to avoid conflicts with those in power and the idea that mining companies or officials could put their thumb on the scale in ways that might hurt other stakeholders.
Right.
But then also that we're going to end up with national security conflicts with our adversaries. So it does feel like it's not quite ready for prime time here.
Exactly, and I think that we could get to a good, bipartisan place here. And I think, I heard the argument of national security from my colleague, which I hear, but I also think the guise of national security has been used over and over again to rush into deregulation. And to me, it's actually a major national security concern that arguably our largest foreign adversary and competitor is not, it would benefit from this greatly and is not, there's nothing we're doing to prevent them from doing so. And I think that's extremely important here.
Yeah, I mean, it ties into some of the concerns that we have about some of the barriers that are being thrown up with some of our allies who produce critical minerals that we simply don't have here. And whether it's tariffs or blowing up NATO or different agreements, that those are areas we should also be working on to address the critical mineral areas.
Absolutely. I think we've done a lot to damage our relationship with our NATO allies and our European allies. I know there was a bipartisan delegation recently to Denmark that had to do a lot of, frankly, damage control on behalf of the United States and trying to indicate that not everybody feels, the way the president does. But I think this could be an area of collaboration, absolutely, and we should be prioritizing those allies in this regard.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Scott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the mining industry is extremely important for the United States of America. Heard a lot of nonsense from the other side, from people that like to kill jobs, but Mr. Stauber, do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we recognize that it's not just verbiage or a quote about our strategic national security. We cannot rely on foreign adversarial nations any longer. COVID taught us so much. And look at what's happening with the critical minerals and rare earths right now. The communist country of China is stopped selling globally 6 rare earth minerals that we need in our everyday life, right? And so we have the opportunity to mine it here with our environmental, our labor standards. Again, Mr. Scott, it's going to be mined somewhere. We got to mine it here. I don't agree with exporting our environmental guilt to other countries to put in our electric vehicles or what have you.
That's exactly what's happening, though.
100%. And so, and again, we, in my opinion, we have the ability, we have the will, we have to take the political science out of this and have the facts and the true science lead us in critical mineral mining in the United States of America. And Minnesota and Alaska and other great states have the opportunity to do it. When we lead, we win.
Yeah. I couldn't help but laugh when I think it was the governor of New York that said now she's for nuclear power. Finally, couldn't ignore the science anymore, could she? I support this legislation, Madam Chair. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez.
Thank you, my good friend, Madam Chair. And I'm going to, since we already talked about the problem of the Republican bills refusing to address the fact that we keep allowing our foreign adversaries, I'm going to go on a different tack. And that is, we know that under Trump, utility prices have skyrocketed, right? And we read it up again, Madam Chair, I'll enter into the record. Energy bills in U.S. have increased 13% since Trump took office, new report finds.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that that's part of the problem is we're seeing an administration that it continues to take policies that increase costs for Americans, but then don't provide any protections for Americans. And this is the tension. We're not saying we shouldn't do mining. We're saying we should do mining responsibly. And since I come from a mining state, I know these issues. And I know that when the mining companies got to say what the rules were, our groundwater was contaminated, our surface water was contaminated, and Madam Chair, you know that in North Carolina and South Carolina, there is a lot of water that's been contaminated by mine sites. Now, what's happening now is it's a lot better, right? Because there have been regulations put in place. And my problem with this bill is that it now says, mining companies, you get to say what you want to do. And we know that mining companies, if we let them make the choices, they're going to do what is best for their short-term profits and not for the long-term benefits of our citizens. And I know Madam Chair is very concerned about water issues. In New Mexico, despite the fact that you have more water than we are, we're very concerned. Does this bill do anything to help keep our water and waterways clean, Representative Ansari?
No, and exactly what you mentioned, Congresswoman, this bill explicitly directs the administration to solicit industry feedback on regulations that they see as burdensome and to implement a plan to roll back each quote-unquote unduly burdensome action. So all of that will happen without any public or tribal consultation. It's deregulation for and by the industry, which has catastrophic consequences, and we know that. And industry support also doesn't mean that it is in the best interest of the American people. I think that is extremely, extremely concerning. I think history has shown us that. And I think this argument around jobs, this bill is not a job creator. It's simply deregulation for and by the industry. And I think it's very rich to be talking about quote unquote killing jobs from Republicans when the reconciliation bill last year literally killed hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs across this country. And so that is what this bill is, and there's nothing in there around protecting our water. There's nothing in there around even protecting national parks. And again, I keep going back to this point because I think the fact that, China is not exempted from this deregulation is highly concerning to me.
Right. And I think that that's what we go back to. In New Mexico, we have stronger environmental regulations than other places. We have stronger methane regulations than across the border. I have the Permian Basin. Literally, if you take pictures, you can actually see that in New Mexico, methane is being released at much lower levels, because they have a way of doing it. And in Texas, much higher levels. And guess what? We are having some record lease sales. So you can both regulate and make a profit, but companies only care about profit. And I think that that's what we need to wear. It's up to us, Congresspeople, to care about our communities. And sadly, Democrats seem to be the only ones caring about both jobs and keeping our waters clean so that we have water to drink and water to utilize for the essential aspects of life. Is there anything else you want to add, Representative Ansari?
No, I think we covered it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith. Oh, that would be me for his time of questioning. So a lot of times I don't ask questions or I don't say anything, but every now and then I get wound up. And unfortunately, this bill's got me a little wound up. We heard earlier that there was a question, will critical minerals be mined immediately under this bill? The answer is obviously no, because it takes a long time to get a mine set up, if you understand mining. Isn't that correct?
Average in the United States, 29 years.
Yeah. Now, we hope to shorten that a little bit, but it takes a while to get a mine set up of any type. And so if you pass a bill today to make it easier, it's not going to happen immediately. Then we heard that utility bills have gone up 13% since Trump has taken office. It's been a little over 12 months. Let me tell you how utility bills go up. And it's not, you can't look at the first 12 months. What you have to do is you go back in time. I was elected on a pro-coal platform because of electric bills. My district, the region that I represent, in the 1990s was the third lowest electric bills in the country because they relied on coal. Now, I know this isn't the coal bill, but it got me stirred up. They relied on coal to do their electricity. Then all of a sudden we came in with Barack Obama's war on coal. Prices had been going up a little bit, and then all of a sudden, boom, it made it harder to mine the coal. It made it harder to use the coal in electric generation. And guess what? We have some of the higher coal prices, or some of the higher electric prices today. And part of that reason is that all the companies that used to rely on coal are rapidly transitioning over, as policy dictates, to other sources. Now, natural gas at this moment is cheaper because of fracking. When I was first elected, everybody, in fact, one of my power companies was building a facility to bring in natural gas imports. And then suddenly, horizontal drilling and fracking came about, and the price of natural gas dropped precipitously. That is a competitor to coal, but depending on the month, coal can compete and will compete. Furthermore, we have taken our coal-fired power plants and we've made it difficult for them to continue to operate, and companies don't want to reinvest in upgrading those plants because they're afraid that somebody will come along, whether it be the state or federal legislation or federal executive orders, and tell them they have to shut down. So when people start saying utility bills have risen 13% since Trump took office, you have to look back in time. Now, I'm not saying you have to look back 29 years, but you have to look back in time. This is not a result of Trump policies. This is a result of Green New Deal policies. This is a result of the war on coal. This is a result of the war on fossil fuels and stranding assets. When you take a facility that was cut the ribbon on it, I was there in 2012 when the ribbon was cut, supposed to have a 50-year life expectancy, and the state legislature's trying to shut them down well before the 50 years is up. Those folks have to then reinvest in new things, and maybe it's a good thing, but they have to reinvest in something like, offshore wind. It's exactly what they did. And guess what the ratepayer gets to do? They get to pay for the old facility and the new facility, and then they want to blame that on Republicans who fought against these policies? I can't sit here and let that happen. I've got to bring it out. Did I say anything that you disagree with, Mr. Chairman?
Chair Griffith, I appreciate your comments. I do want to talk about something that I think was.
All right, let me give you that in a second. Do you disagree with anything that I said?
don't.
All right. Now, is there something else you'd like to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to correct the record, if I may. This does nothing to the NEPA regulations. It does nothing to affect the Clean Water Act. It does nothing to negatively affect the Clean Air Act, and nothing to the Endangered Species Act. These are four critical pieces during the permitting process that both the state and the federal look at. So this legislation doesn't diminish any of that whatsoever.
And I would have to agree with you on that and say to you that, people who say that we want to use fossil fuels or critical minerals and we want to mine those and that somehow we're against the environment is just wrong. One of the most thrilling things that's happened to me in the last few months is I got to see an Andean condor. We care about the environment, but just like Ms. Ledger-Fernandez said, we may disagree on how to get there, but you can do some regulations like NEPA and Endangered Species Act and so forth and continue to create jobs through mining, whether it be critical minerals or what we mine in my district is coal, and we do have natural gas. We have coal bed methane.
Yeah.
We've actually been fracking in my district for about 50 years. It just wasn't horizontal fracking in the coal beds. And these are good jobs, and unfortunately, when the war on coal started, they killed those jobs. There weren't other jobs there. They didn't get any new jobs in the clean energy fields. Everybody kept promising they could have new jobs. Well, I got to tell you something. You take a coal mining job paying more than $100,000 a year and you say, well, we're going to get you another job working at the Family Dollar. There's nothing wrong with working at the Family Dollar, but it doesn't pay what it pays in the mining industry. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I got to tell you that my good friend from New Mexico has the luxury of having two major industries, oil and gas and mining. All I'm asking is, let us mine. Let my constituents make $135,000 a year. Why can't my constituents have that? Good paying jobs.
I'm going to vote for this bill and I'm going to vote for this rule, and I appreciate it because I want your constituents and my constituents to have the ability to have good jobs in the mining industry. And with that, I yield back and now recognize Mr. Jack, the gentleman from Georgia.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I see with my tirade, I ran everybody else off. Oh, I didn't see Ralph sitting there. He's hiding. I apologize. Mr. Norman.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Representative Stauber, for doing this. This is a good bill. You know, this country's been under a lot of stress because of the Biden administration the last 4 years, what they've done. Just hadn't been the immigration, mass immigration that he's allowed, that's unconstitutional. I was in the room when the governor of Alaska came in. The Biden administration shut down the Alaska Keystone Pipeline and pretty much immobilized all of Alaska for their income. We've got a lot of minerals in Arizona that, in talking with what the Biden administration did, was unfathomable. And, you know, with China aggressively going after this country, and the minerals that they threatened to shut down, it was President Trump who had a one-year reprieve when Beijing threatened to shut down the rare earth exports, which would have interrupted semiconductor chips and magnets essential for our military. There's no reason we ought to be beholden to China. It's a failure of politicians. So thank you for doing this. Don't want to belabor the point. We'll be supporting it. Good bill. I yield back.
All right, that concludes all the folks wishing to ask questions from this panel. We appreciate you being here. And now, where do I go? Straight to here? All right. And now we're going to go to witnesses on amendments. Do we have any witnesses who wish to speak on their amendments? Amendments, yes. Come on up if you want to talk about an amendment. Come on up. All right. All right. Ms. Randall, you're recognized for 5 minutes to talk about your amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and Ranking Member McGovern, committee members, for the opportunity to testify today on the funding package. Across the country, from the streets of Minneapolis to high school students in Aberdeen to the neighborhood vigils happening across my district, the American people have been unequivocally clear. No more funding for ICE. No more funding for Kristi Noem, for Stephen Miller, for Tom Homan, for Greg Bovino. No more abuses of tribal sovereignty. No more violating the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. No more illegal warrantless searches, pulling people from their cars, using their children to lure them outside. We've had enough. Renee Good and Alex Preddy's murders were deliberate, intentional acts of violence perpetrated by the Trump administration. And the wake-up call for this Republican majority should have come sooner. There have been more than 30 deaths of individuals in ICE custody under this fascist regime. ICE agents are tear gassing families in their cars, individuals simply exercising their First Amendment rights. There's blood on the hands of every individual aiding and abetting the Trump administration's dangerous, fear-mongering invasions of U.S. cities. I refuse to stand by while our neighbors are shot in the streets, while children are kidnapped from their parents, and while tribal citizens are held hostage. I'm here today to call for Secretary Noem's immediate resignation, and if not, her impeachment. But she's not the only one who should be out of a job at DHS. Customs and Border Patrol's Greg Bovino, the architect of the chaos that's been unleashed on the streets of Minneapolis, is directly responsible for this administration's cruel assault on constitutional protections. He should be out of a job, and even President Trump knows it. Shortly after Nurse Pretty's murder, Bovino was demoted and kicked out of Minnesota, but that's not nearly enough. Just like no one wanted pedophile priests shuffled from one parish to another, it's unacceptable to move a bad agent from one state to the next. That's why I'm offering an amendment to demote his salary to $1. Taxpayer dollars should not be given to individuals who think they're above the law, who are driven by bigotry, and who are murdering Americans. And the list of laws they are violating is much longer than I have time to go into in my limited time here. But of particular concern to me is the way that these rogue agents have been violating the sovereignty of tribal nations. I'm hearing from tribal members in my district, as well as those in Minnesota and across the country, that ICE is illegally detaining and targeting Native people for their skin color. This is abhorrent. And that's why I'm bringing forward an amendment that would condition federal funding for ICE on upholding tribal sovereignty. My amendment would prevent ICE from entering an Indian reservation, tribal trust land, or restricted fee land without first notifying the tribe with jurisdiction over the land of their presence. That notification must include an acknowledgement by ICE that they have reviewed what the Indian tribe's tribal identification card looks like and reaffirms that members carrying those cards are in fact American citizens. We must continue to reinforce protections for tribal lands. We must continue to fight back against ICE's violation of the Fourth Amendment, and we must ensure that their so-called immigration enforcement operations don't hinder public safety. That's why I'm also offering my bill, the Emergency Responder Protection Act, as an amendment to this funding package. What happened last summer, CBP agents holding up crews fighting the Bear Gulch fire in my district for hours to interrogate and ask for IDs before ultimately detaining 2 first responders, should never be allowed to happen again. I've met with local officials from across the country who are scared this will happen in their communities next, which is why I introduced the Emergency Responder Protection Act and will keep fighting for it to become law. And this brings me to my final point about why there is no other option than to remove Secretary Noem from office. She is so obsessed with dressing up in tactical gear and posing for photo shoots with weapons that she has completely forgotten the important emergency response functions at DHS. I know some of my colleagues are wary of voting no on this package because it would also withhold funding for other DSH agencies like FEMA, but let's be real. Those other agencies are also suffering with Kristi Noem at the helm. Under her leadership, she's been dangerously undermining the safety and resiliency of our communities dealing with disaster. FEMA has frozen critical funds like the BRIC grant program, held up billions in disaster relief, and treated disaster response as political gamesmanship by punishing states and arbitrary withholding funds. The communities in my district who are experiencing more and more frequent flooding desperately need those funds. That's why I also have an amendment to condition this funding package on releasing all of the frozen FEMA BRIC grant funding, because Secretary Noem is dangerous. She's dangerous for the American citizens. She's dangerous for immigrant communities. She's dangerous to local governments who are simply trying to protect lives, property, and infrastructure in the face of a worsening climate crisis. I urge this committee to include my amendments in the funding package. And finally, I want to note my support for Representative Summer Lee's amendment to the Clinton contempt resolution to hold Attorney General Pam Bondi in contempt. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back. Ms. Fishbach?
I have no questions.
No questions. Mr. McGovern?
No, I support your amendments. I thank you for coming here. But as you have probably learned by now, on appropriations bills in particular, this majority has not been particularly open to allowing there to be debate and votes on the House floor, which is, again, why what is happening now is far from regular order. But I appreciate you being here, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott has no questions. Ms. Scanlon? No questions. Now we're coming to me. I appreciate it, and it has nothing to do with you, and they keep telling people this. You have what is technically a Holman amendment to reduce a salary to $1. Except, while technically correct that you could reduce it under Holman to $1, it's been driving me crazy because legislative services tells everybody that. Oh, this is what you do. Except it's in violation of other laws, state and federal wage laws related to minimum wage. The purpose of the Holman rule is to rearrange the agency. And in the process of doing that, you can either eliminate a position or reduce the salary, but you can't reduce it in violation of other laws. Now, that's not your fault. That's the drafters of these things, and both sides have put them in, and I've gotten to where I'm voting present on them. I used to vote against them just because they're not written right. So anytime anybody on either side wants to write a Holman rule provision, come to me and I'll help you draft it. I'll probably vote against it, but I'll help you draft it so it gets drafted correctly. That's all I wanted to say was procedurally, it drives me crazy. And Legislative Services, Mr. Ranking Member, has told everybody that's what you do. It's just, it doesn't work legally, and it's not the way the Holman rule is supposed to be used.
Can I make a radical suggestion?
Yes, sir.
Make her amendment in order. You can make that case on the House floor, and we can debate it, and you can vote no.
No, I've been voting present on them because I like to see people using the rule as the guardian or shepherd of the modern usage of the Holman rule. I like to see people using it, but I'd like to see them use it correctly. So anyway, I appreciate that, but I probably won't make this one in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, really quickly. I appreciate that education. You know, as a brand new member of Congress, so learning the ropes around here. What I will say is that what I'm hearing from my constituents and the constituents of folks in red and blue districts across the country, they're frustrated by the lack of rules, or by the lack of tools, the ability to safeguard the rule of law, the Constitution, and they are crying out for us to do something.
And I would just say that is what Holman's for. It's just not been applied when you got advice on how to do it. And they do it to everybody, so it's not just you. And so I don't want anybody to think that this was
Oh, no,
your
I don't feel
error.
attacked. I don't feel
Okay.
attacked at all.
Because that's not the case. This is a legislative services thing. All right, I yield back. And now recognize Mr. Nagus.
Well, I thank the chairman, and I thank the gentlewoman for her amendment and for being here. I certainly support her amendment. I just want to take an opportunity because, you know, my colleague, my good friend from South Carolina, was not here earlier to hear my diatribe.
Right? They say, oh, you look Latino, let's arrest you, you know. And I think that that's the problem, is that there is no accountability. Even when somebody says we don't like this happening, even when you acknowledge you shouldn't shoot somebody dead because they were carrying a licensed firearm, which many Republicans went on the TV talk shows and said, oh, he was carrying a firearm, he deserved what he got, right? Republicans were saying that Alex Preddy shouldn't have bought a gun as a protester there, even though it was legal. But there are no ways to hold Noam accountable. There's nothing in the bills right now that will hold the agents accountable. And in fact, the opposite. They think they are completely immune. And they're not. The Constitution applies to them. But until we say we're going to force them to comply with the Constitution, it's not going to work. I agree that that's the dollar, right? That's the dollar. That's where you're going at. Now, wouldn't it be better if we actually said there is no sovereign immunity, there's no immunity for what they're doing? What do you think of that kind of bill? And I'm sure you've signed on to some of the bills.
Absolutely. We have worked on qualified immunity in my time at the state legislature, and I think the American people want the same kind of accountability for federal agents who are literally murdering people in the streets. They want to ensure that they can be held accountable in the courts, and also, really the bare minimum, that there is an independent investigation when there is a fatality at the hands of federal agents.
Right, and these are the kinds of accountability measures we can include in the appropriations language that should be included in the appropriations language that Democrats are insisting, and any Republican who actually believes in freedoms. If you believe in freedom in the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 10th Amendment, if you believe in freedoms and you keep saying that you do, you should vote for these accountability measures. But all we're hearing is you can't put that in an appropriations bill. And that's why Democrats aren't trusting them. And I think that that is the problem that we have. Now, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request a unanimous consent.
Please state it.
Mr. Chair, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record written testimony from Representative Salinas in support of amendment number 24 to the Senate amendment to H.R. 7148, which would hold the federal government civilly liable when CPB or ICE officer violates an individual's constitutional government. And this is the thing, is if they're violating your constitutional rights, there should be a means of holding them accountable.
Without objection, the testimony is
Yeah.
submitted for the record.
Yeah, and I think that that's the thing, and that's what you're also getting at. And so I appreciate you coming here to testify, clarifying that this is the kind of thing that exists for every other law enforcement, and actually exists for federal law enforcement officers until we had Kristi Noem and Donald Trump as president, where they're saying the laws don't apply to us. That's the frustration. The laws apply to everybody, and let's make that happen. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back, seeing no one else wishing to ask questions. We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. All right. The committee stands in